Hello, happy Friday. Hope everyone who is tuning in had a good new year. I just chilled at the house. I had some car issues the day before New Year's and nobody was open to fix it, so I had to chill. But I really didn't have anything planned anyway. But yeah, I did actually work on that documentary that I talked a little bit about the other night, and I've made some good progress with it. But it's crazy how intense doing that is, like how how long it takes. I I'm used to editing down like 10, 20, 30-minute videos sometimes, but like a 2-hour documentary where you're clipping something every 5 minutes is really, really crazy. I worked for like 2 days straight on it and I got through like 30 minutes, I think. So it's pretty good, but I have about a probably at least an hour to go. Yeah, yeah, I did. I was starting to, because there were some parts of it that still needed to be edited that I was looking through, and I was like, "Oh, wait," I was getting all tripped up. So I was like, "Oh, yeah," and then I didn't have enough stuff planned after that, so I was like, "Ah, let's just cut it." I'm still getting used to, the live setup, but I did definitely improve some things. I figured out how to get the screen to share like the whole screen, which you'll see today. And I ordered a wire connection so I can uh like stream video a little bit better without all the interruptions that we've been having. But I'll get into some of the stuff that I was seeing today, just a couple of stories, and then some more Epstein research because a lot more stuff came out. Let's see here. I had a couple of links already saved. Now make present. Wait, let's see. Here it is. Yeah, so as you could see, you could actually the whole screen is kind of filled. Oh no, now it is. Before there were all these bars at the top and the bottom that I was not liking, but now it's a little bit better. But yeah, so I'm sure a lot of you have seen this kid that has gone around for stalking the daycare centers and stuff in Minnesota. There's obviously been a lot about it, and there's all this drama with the government getting involved now. But actually, the government has been involved with this situation for like years. There was like legitimate fraud going on, and there are people that are going to jail and stuff. And it looks like this kid just kind of like recycled, did some copy and paste journalism, and just saw kind of an old story and went around and tried to capitalize on it. But it seemed to me when I saw the video at first, I was like, well, of course they're not letting this kid with a camera and some guy with a mask and to like look at their children. I thought it was a little bit weird to begin with. That's why I didn't really pay much attention to it. And then it started getting like boosted everywhere. And then I was like, what is this weird, kind of campaign situation happening? And it does definitely seem somewhat coordinated. And I saw some squirrel posted this today about how he kind of has done a lot of work for Israel on their like propaganda wing. Now, there does seem to be a coordinated effort to kind of attack the Somali population here. And it is quite coincidental that Somaliland, which is, of course, a breakaway state of Somalia, was just recognized as a state by Israel. And in exchange, they're going to get like a base. Israel's going to be able to put a base there, which gives them close proximity to Yemen and a couple of other things that will be useful for them. And there were some other conditions as well. Um, but the main point was that it definitely seems like going after the Somalian population and just Muslims in general. It seems like a targeted campaign, and it's not just me saying that out of nowhere. Oh no, that's a different. Israel's involved in a lot of stuff this week. This guy is an Israeli, and he says like a lot of the Israeli media and people over there are actually kind of celebrating this and saying like we helped out with this, and a couple of politicians have as well, even though this Nick guy has denied that he was connected with any of these politicians. But let's look at what this guy has to say.
How is the Israeli Mossad related How is the Israeli Mossad related to the recent corruption that was discovered in Minnesota? You're not going to believe it, but there actually is a substantial connection, and it runs through the Israeli Prime Minister office. I'll start from the end. Israel just established relationships with Somaliland, which is not Somalia. But the backstory to the whole Minnesota corruption story is that much of those funds, and again, I think the initial number that came out is about $9 billion. Again, this is crazy. American taxpayer money of, let's say, 15 billion that they imagine were stolen or misdiverted from public funds. About 9 billion of those were sent back to support terrorism, or what they would call the Muslim Brotherhood actions, and this is tied into Qatar. And Israel, of course, was behind the scenes, and I know people love these conspiracies, in leaking some of the information that is responsible or related to the funding of terrorism using that exact money. So the fact that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has a phone call and recognizes Somaliland is tied into Qatar being a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, tied into the Somali funds that were stolen in Minnesota funding terrorism in the Middle East. That is the story that came out right now.
And notice how he said leaked the information to that influencer. More likely, like they gave him a call and said, "Hey, this is the story that you need to cover." And this has been shown a lot with the Republican Party and even with the Democrats as well. Taylor Lorenz had that great article out, a couple weeks ago, or maybe even months ago now. Yeah, it was over the summer, about how they they were there were influencers that basically were getting regular meetings with the party to tell them what the talking points were. And I'm sure that it's definitely happening hardcore on the Republican side of things, and there have been many examples. I think that this is a big one, especially with how we know Israel to be with the propaganda. But now there's all of these crazy people going around and harassing these daycare centers now, and it's probably going to create a dangerous situation. I saw right here another post here. It seems like there's a lot of influencers as well descending upon Minneapolis, and they don't understand the local area. And so this woman here is saying that the streets are empty because it's so dangerous and the cars get broken into, just like creating this narrative. And this guy is saying that, it's really cold this time of year and there's an interior system of tunnels and walkways so people can avoid the cold. Um, and that kind of brings me to one of my main issues about the video that the kid did that I saw. Um, a lot of people are saying it's journalism, but I don't really think that trying to rush into a place to get some content is journalism. And a lot of people mistake content for journalism. So, like, if he wanted to do journalism, if he really suspected that this fraud was taking place because he saw the, 4-year-old stories about, people who were arrested for fraud, he would have sat outside of the place in a car for like a month or something. He would have staked the place out. He would have looked at their records and done things like that. That's like an investigation. Going into a place to create a scene is not an investigation. So that's why I don't really even think it's in good faith. And Yeah, that's it, that's kind of how I see it. And so much of that of what we see from these influencers nowadays, it is like it's not actual journalism. It's just they're trying to create a scene somewhere to get content, and that's what ends up happening. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to bring too much to that because it has been, you know, played to death, I think, and it's really been hyped up more so than I think it should. And I definitely think intentionally, especially on Twitter, to distract from a lot of the other things that are going on. Um, but yeah, I did see there's a lot going on with Iran, and I saw a wild post from Mike Pompeo. I'm not sure if anybody has seen this yet, but oh, did he delete it? Let me see. There's a lot of people who got the screenshot, so it's fine. But yeah, no, he didn't delete it. Cool. Let's see here. Yeah, so he's talking about the protests in Iran, which yeah, Trump has now threatened, to get involved somehow if there's too much brutality on the citizens. Which there's always brutality everywhere when there's anybody revolting against the government or trying to even protest in any minimal way. But yeah, so here's Mike Pompeo says the Iranian regime is in trouble. Bringing in mercenaries is its last best hope. Riots in dozens of cities and the Basij under siege. Mashhad, Tehran, Zahedin, next stop. Yeah, and he says 47 years of this regime. POTUS 47 coincidence. He is like unhinged with his posting. But he says, Happy New Year to every Iranian in the streets, also to every Mossad agent walking beside them. And this is the former US Secretary of State and CIA director. And he has been like telling Trump like how great of a job he's doing. And you know, I I do think that he has it's not just Mossad in there. It's also I had some other posts as well, but it's also the US as well, for sure. And there have been plans, which I had saved. There was some document right here. It is. The US policy papers, like the 2009 Brookings Which Path to Persia, focused on the overthrow and destruction of Iran, list a number of options, including sanctions, color revolution, terrorism, proxy war, using Israel, and outright US war. All options the US has now repeatedly used and will continue using, both one after the other as well as in combination. Riots in Iran will be combined with all of these other options, including terrorism and almost certainly additional military aggression. So, yeah, I think this is definitely a joint effort and uh, there's this kind of big argument over is Israel forcing the U.S. to do these things, or you know, I think that there is a mutual, at least when it comes to the ruling class in the U.S., there's a mutually beneficial agreement here. They both want the oil in that area. They both want destabilization in that region, and of course, there is the plans for Greater Israel as well. So, which Iran is one of the main powers in the area that's standing in its way. So I definitely think that the protests that are happening are legit and have legitimacy to them. But I also think, like most protests that happen pretty much anywhere in the world that the U.S. wants to sink their teeth into, or really much anywhere where they want to defend as well. So pretty much anywhere. Um, there is going to be a co-option of this movement. I remember even with Occupy Wall Street here back in the day, I remember going to the first one in the closest city near me, and this being this genuine thing happening the first day, and then the second day you got the people who are coming in and trying to hijack the narrative, and eventually they do become powerful enough to do so, and the things either go in a certain direction or they get watered down. In the case of the U.S., here with Occupy Wall Street, they wanted to water it down. Over there, they can crank it up, and that is kind of what Mike Pompeo was suggesting, was that you know even though there are legitimate concerns that people in Iran have about both the economy and the theocracy, uh, there's there's also elements within the protests that are trying to speak for them and trying to set up what's next. I remember the very similar situations happened in Egypt when there was that big revolution many years ago, and it just kind of ended up being a military dictatorship in the end because of all of the forces that were pushing for things to go in a certain direction that was, easier to control. So I do think that it is going to be something interesting to see how it plays out, because I support anybody that's having a revolution against their government, especially when it is a heavily controlled society, like Iran or the United States for that matter. Um, but at the same time, I hope that it goes in the right direction, and I think that it's kind of important to make it aware that there is these kind of efforts to to push all these governments in a particular direction, and that is actually one of the things that's really highlighted in the documentary that I have coming out in hopefully a week or two. Um, it is just how so many of the things that are framed as human rights and we're fighting for human rights, there's always like a underlying reason, like a resource that they need or a strategical positioning type situation. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of people that suggest that it's like it's like the US is the dog being walked by Israel, but I really don't think. I think it is a mutually beneficial partnership, even though it's not mutually beneficial for the average people of the United States. It is, for the people in power. War is always good. Um, yeah, I know. It's like that. That's what I'm concerned about, is the Arab Spring, is that it's not going to be a real revolution. It's going to be what like happened in Syria and what happened in Egypt and all these other places where, you know, uh, I- I- Assad was bad, but now we got an ISIS guy in there that's friends with Trump, ironically enough. Trump just keeps on saying he's a very strong man, very great guy. So that whole thing is very concerning, especially because Iran is such a big country. Uh, but that is another reason why perhaps it might be a little bit stronger in these situations. There have been many of these types of almost revolutions in the past, but at the same time, I really I always hate to root for any regime to stay in power, so that is one thing there. Let's see what we got on there. I think that was all I had on that. But I also saw this Peter Thiel thing. Well, this Peter Thiel thing is pretty wild, but actually, I will, before I jump on that, I will check and see. I've been ignoring the chat because I've been reading and stuff. I gotta check up. All right, cool. I've caught up. Um, yeah. So first, I saw this dude post this and says Peter Thiel is enriching in uranium. So I saw that he was involved in this company, and I'm like, oh wait, what is this? So it's called General Matter. I started looking it up. I found a couple of links. Let's see what I got. But there were some things I knew about Peter Thiel's history as well, and the history of his family, that really caught my eye with this. Because yeah, so Peter T- billionaire Peter Thiel backing first privately developed U.S. uranium enrichment facility in Paducah. Let's see, where the hell is Paducah? I guess it's California. A California based company with ties to billionaire investor and Trump ally Peter Thiel announced plans Friday to build America's first US owned, privately developed facility to enrich uranium in far western Kentucky. Oh, okay, that's where Paducah is. In an email sent to WKMS, General Matter said that the company intends to make a historic investment in American nuclear infrastructure by restoring a shuttered facility in Paducah. The gaseous diffusion plant in McCracken County, which ceased operations in 2013, was built by the U.S. government in the 1950s to bolster national defense efforts and later generate fuel for nuclear plants. So let's see. Yeah, so it's talking all about the jobs and all that. Let's see. It's also led by a former SpaceX employee, and he's a partner at the venture capital firm Founders Fund. Founders Fund, as we talked about the other night, is Peter Thiel's uh, investment company. So Scott Noland is a partner and he is running this thing. So this isn't just something that Peter Thiel is invested in. This is something that he is very closely involved in. And this thing was just founded last year. A couple of articles went around about it a few months ago, but I don't really think it got a lot of news. I didn't really see it. Um there has been a lot of news this year, though, that things are hard to keep up with. But when I saw this, I instantly thought of the fact that I've always heard stories about Peter Thiel and how he grew up in like in this crazy town in South Africa where they like praised Hitler and stuff like that. And I've heard about the town before, and I was remember being shocked that he was from it, even though not shocked, but you know what I mean, being like that's kind of crazy. And his family reportedly was very involved in this uranium mine nearby that was extremely dangerous for the people who worked there. And I found this article that somebody put together earlier this year that went into some of the sources about this. Oh wow, yeah, I didn't. That was the first I had heard of Paducah. I didn't. The school shootings, they definitely are easy to get lost in as well because there's so many of them. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting angle because you know, this is like he's getting back into the family business in a way. So, Klaus Thiel, who also was very good friends with Klaus Schwab, apparently, moved his family to occupied Nambia to help South African apartheid regime create a secret nuclear program. So this says in 1968, Suzanne and Klaus Thiel left Frankfurt am Main, West Germany, with their 1 year old son Peter for Cleveland, Ohio. There is little information about Klaus other than what Peter himself offered to his biographers, which is that Klaus was a chemical engineer. One detail we don't know, for example, is why Klaus left Germany for America, but we do know what was happening in Frankfurt before he left. Now, this I had not known until I came across this article, and this is pretty wild. So, the Frankfurt Auschwitz trials were the trials of 21 or 22 Nazi personnel who served at the Auschwitz camp complex between 1940 and 1945. The trials primarily took place in Frankfurt am Main between 20th of December 1963 and 20th of August 1965. The second trial took place between the 14th of December and the 14th of December and the 1st of September. Three of the former senior staff in the camp were tried. One was sentenced to life, and the two were sentenced to prison terms. So the third trial took place between the 30th of August, 1967, and 14th of June, 1968. And they were charging people pretty harshly. So it does kind of line up that, you know, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that this family who fled Germany while they were having trials, to try to bring the Nazis to justice, maybe not fled, but left, and then didn't really like that very much, so they moved to one of the most infamous Nazi towns in South Africa. Like that, just it just seems to be quite an equation there. After arriving in the United States with his young family in the 1960s, apparently Klaus Thiel was dissatisfied with his new home, and yet, like I was explaining, after applying for U.S. citizenship, left America within a few years with his wife and son for apartheid South Africa. Thiel worked for a chemical engineering contractor, which was helping create a uranium mine in what was then South Africa occupied Namibia. The mine, called Rosig, was a part of a secret operation to provide nuclear weapon to the racist apartheid regime. Yeah, interesting fact that they stopped. They shut down their nuclear program after apartheid ended. Um, Allegedly, anyway. Let's see. What article was that leak into? In March 1993, South Africa had secretly developed a small nuclear arsenal and then junked it, was startling in its candor. Nevertheless, left many questions President's announcement left many questions unanswered regarding the scope and sophistication of the program. Trying to read this is really small. The bedrock question is, of course, is why South Africa developed and built 7 fission weapons in the first place. So, yeah, and they say this was no ordinary mine. It was notorious for its brutality. Let's see what it says here. Where is this from? Here's a fascinating document from. I wish I knew what the source was for this. They don't give a source for what's going on here. So, company received a license to mine uranium, but the license was apparently illegal because it was given. Okay. So what I'm trying to find is like how what his exact role was, because I think calling him a chemical engineer, which was what Peter Thiel called him, was really underplaying his significance in this, because it seemed like he was, you know, dealing with businesses outside of Africa to get involved in this. And let's see. And yeah, here it talks about the human rights record and the slave labor that happened there, and how I remember hearing in another story how they used to give people the paychecks through this like thick, apparently radioactive proof glass or something like that, because they didn't want to get hurt themselves, but didn't care and didn't really tell the workers what was going on. And there's a lot of environmental issues too. I really wish I knew what the source of that is. I'll find it later. So this talks about the Namibian independence movement in the 1980s that implicates the UK, and by virtue of it complicates its effectiveness, the UN, in profiting from and enabling this criminal operation, which was run by the mostly UK monarchy-owned mining behemoth Rio Tinto. Let's see. Yeah, and it looks like this is the progression of when it was built and when it operated. During the 1970s, while his father was participating in setting up this depraved uranium operation, Peter was in a South African apartheid non-denominational Christian school called Pridwin, which is still, despite all the laws against it, apparently a haven for racism. However, in 1975, Thiel changed schools again to a German school in Namibia, which was then being illegal occupied by the South African by the apartheid South African regime. Despite having been told by the UN that they had no right to be there, okay, yeah. So this was the one that was famously one of the last places where it was common to greet each other with hail. Yeah, probably Not gonna say that audibly, just for the algorithm's sake, and yeah. So that is how they greeted each other in the place where Peter Thiel grew up. And like, you can't, this stuff is so crazy. And the school that Peter Thiel went celebrated his birthday. What? That is insane. A date, wow. It sucks that it's on 420. I don't like that. I've never liked that. Let's see. The company that ran Klaus Thiel's uranium mine has a very shameful history. This includes, so they were even helping out Hitler way back in the day. So yeah, that is, I think, quite an interesting rabbit hole there. And it is also weird, like how many of the billionaires who currently are very involved in the administration, and you know, running the world in general, or at least in the US at the top of the Forbes list and all that, there a lot of them are from South Africa and grew up during this time, which is very strange and a little bit suspicious, I'd say the least. But yeah, I think the intersection of Thiel and Klaus Schwab is quite interesting too. Peter Thiel's father and Klaus Schwab. I haven't really looked into that to confirm it or anything, but I did see something about that, and I'm gonna like look deeper into that to see if I could find anything solid. But let's see. I think that is it for that. I did see a bunch of new Epstein stuff too. Epstein. I saw he wrote that he spelled his name wrong, Stine, on the chalkboard in that famous picture of him at Dalton School. And like I wonder if he just didn't know how to spell his name, or he was trying to like get people to stop saying Steen, which everybody in the world says now, and I'm going to continue saying. It's just especially if he didn't like it. Um, but yeah, there was a bunch going on today, so I'll bring up some of these stories. First off, though, the the deal with the 5 million new files or something like that, that's a bunch of nonsense. They knew that they were there. Those 5 million are probably they were probably hoping that they could get away with pretending that they didn't exist, because those are probably going to be the ones with the actual interviews with the victims or the survivors that they really don't want out. Um, but yeah, let's see. And it's going to be interesting because they haven't produced anything since Volume 8, which they put out a while back, before the holidays. And then you had the whole thing where Trump was saying that he didn't want them to work on it anymore. So that was kind of suspicious as well. So it's be interesting to see if they even release any, if they release any more, or they end up getting put in contempt or something like that. Let's see. I'm trying to find, there was a whole bunch of weird stuff that I found. Like, apparently, in the pictures, Melania's wedding ring was seen Melania Trump's wedding ring was seen in Jeffrey Epstein's house, and they're trying to figure out what the deal with that is. Um, oh yeah, then there's the big whole thing with the eugenics rabbit hole with him. I'm gonna save that one for the end, and if I end up getting time for that, I'll jump into that. But if not, I'll save it for another time, because that's a deep rabbit hole. If I talk about that, I'm gonna get into the history of that being a part of the culture in the US, which was originally taken from the UK, which was then really taken to the extreme in Germany. And the and has really kind of had a comeback in the past couple years, unfortunately. So let me share this other tab here. This is one of the craziest ones I saw. So it says, "Why is Melania Trump's wedding ring in the Epstein file release? I always suspected the only reason they got married is so they can't testify against each other." Wow, that is wild. This account, Grizzy, has been really, really just dropping a lot of interesting stuff. I think they are focused like almost exclusively on this, at least right now. Um, but let's look at this file here. Let me pull up the Department of Justice file. This is, yeah, this is the Department of Justice website here. That looks like a pretty distinctive ring, I'd say. Let's see what we got here. Let's go back to this. I mean, it does look quite similar.
Wasn't even gonna post
I'm
on here
not a
today because like
jeweler.
the For You page
Let's
is like
see. Let's
completely
see what the
wasn't even gonna
TikTokers
post
have
on
to
here
say.
today because like the For You page is like completely messed up. But I was poking around in like my forums that I like to look at with Jeffrey related things, and I stumbled across something crazy. Someone found like a bombshell in the files. So this was discovered in the scanned PDF documents that the DOJ released. This is a obviously huge diamond ring, right? But it's not just a diamond ring. That is the First Lady of the United States' a diamond ring that was given to her by the sitting president, Donald Trump. Here's a closer look of the ring that was found within Jeffrey's property. Here's another example, and I'll insert more examples, but that is the same ring. Like, I know that there's like lore behind her ring and how Donald Trump lied about like the price of it, but why would it have been in Jeffrey's possession at any point in time? This is like why the DOJ has to release things with like context, things that are dated. We don't even know when this photo was taken. Was it taken during the Palm Beach investigation? Was it taken during the 2019 investigation? We don't even know. There is literally no way that that is not the same ring. Like, to go even further, like the jeweler that this was bought at was in London, and we know that Donald Trump got Melania's ring from a London jeweler. Like, what is going on here? I've got a lot of questions, but I know we will be offered no answers. Like, what is this?
That is really crazy, especially wow, really? It could be, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't know how I'm not a jeweler, so I don't know how unique that ring is. But it's definitely interesting for sure. Let's see what else there was. Yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting one to see what the actually, let's take a look at the comments. Let's see if there were any jewelers in the comments. Let's see. Because I did like it, I think. Yeah, let's see if there are any jewelers in the comments who have anything to say about this. Post is speculative. Any further investigation, the ring does not appear. Oh, okay, wait. It's not the original. I'm glad I checked this. So this is not an Asprey Gerard ring, but appears to be. Wait. That ring box does not appear to be the original. This is not an Asprey ring, but appears to be Melania's. I don't understand what that means. After further investigation, the ring box does not appear to be the original. Okay, so it's not it. And then it says this is not an Asprey Gerard ring, but appears to be Melania's diamond ring. So here it's saying it isn't, but here it says it is. Am I like my reading comprehension bad or something? Or does somebody understand that better than I do? Let's see. Key information regarding Asprey and Gerard. It was a jeweler in the Trump Tower or a jewelry place in the Trump Tower. Huh. I'm gonna have to stay up on that because if that is weird. That is absolutely weird. The other thing that I'm sure many of you saw is that, according to the Wall Street Journal, uh, Mar-a-Lago spa attendants that were mostly teenagers were sent to Jeffrey Epstein's place on multiple occasions until eventually uh, one of them reported him to HR, and they wrote a stern letter to Trump, and he said, okay, fine, ban him. And then still apparently maintained friendship with him after that. And there was also a weird timeline thing. Like, this was after he apparently said that this was after the whole thing happened with Virginia. So it messes up his timeline with saying he threw Jeffrey out because of Virginia. Now, it does stand to reason that his memory is fuzzy and such, but there are definitely some timeline issues there. And then there's also the fact that the administration came out and totally denied the fact that that happened at all. So the redeeming parts of the story for them would be denied in that case. And apparently Epstein was like notorious among the staff, and they would try to tell each other, don't go to this guy, or call in sick or whatever, because he was just notorious for being a creep. So that is, it definitely lends more to the theory that Mar-a-Lago was involved in that operation. Let's see, go back to the bookmarks here. Yeah, and then we have another survivor who came out, and I wasn't sure about what she was saying here, because she named the men that Julie Bryant had named the other day, which we talked about on stream, which were Michael Bay and uh, the no longer living politician from New Mexico. Um, but and then she also names Ehud Barak and says that Virginia had named him, even though I don't think she named him by name, but she called him the prime minister in her book. So I'm not sure if she named Ehud Barak as well here in this video, Haley Robinson, or Robson. Uh, Maybe you can let me know how you interpret it. But regardless, she did put this out, so this is worth it.
Walking into 2026 with some big balls, so let's go. Ehud Barak, Michael Bay, John Paulson. There's a couple names right there, guys. DOJ has it. Government has it. They're sitting on it. Okay, these names have been circulating for quite some time. I have seen podcasts where they talk about Ehud Barak and what he did to Virginia. She's not the only one, allegedly. Michael Bay, Juliet just came out. Juliet Bryant naming Michael Bay. That's been a name that's been circulating for a while. Guys, it's gonna happen. But the thing is whether you come to the victims and you're asking us for names, you have to understand what we're dipping our toes in. Okay? And there's nobody to protect us. There's nobody to look out for us. We could end up in civil lawsuits. We can end up dead. It's actually quite ridiculous that it's come down to the fact that now people like Juliet Bryant have to come out and start naming names because this DOJ is so fucking incompetent. Because this administration is incompetent because his friends are going to get hurt. What kind of human being has these kind of people in their circle? And you're the president of the United States. Choose your friends better.
So yeah, that was the most recent thing. I definitely understand their fear too. And what she was talking about there was kind of like a little bit of uh I guess like conflict, I guess, that's happened between a few of them. Because there are a lot of people who are like really pressuring them to put names out there, including the one that said something a couple months ago at the press conference. And there is um and there is Julie who's putting the stuff out, and she's definitely being very aggressive about it, which is good for her if she wants to do it that way. But then you know there's been some conflict between her and one of the other survivors over that, um, because I think somebody felt pressured or something. I think that that was probably what she was speaking to, and whatever way they want to handle each one of them individually, like I think we should respect that. But that I think that that is the first time that Ehud Barak was named like actual publicly, because the other times he was just referred to as the prime minister, at least from what I saw from Virginia's stuff. Um, let's see what else we have. I know that there was a couple of really big ones in there. Yeah, this remember the other night we were kind of talking about the brother, and he's the one who's been on all of these shows, and talking about how Jeffrey was killed, and really saying a lot of like the fact that the way that his neck was broken and things like that would have been impossible. And we were talking kind of back and forth in the chat about like how much can this guy be trusted, because he says that he wasn't a part of anything that his brother did. Well, according to this researcher, that might have been a little bit closer than he let on. Let's see what they have to say. Mark Epstein, yep, Epstein's brother, owns the majority of the units in the Manhattan condo building at 301 East 66th Street via his company OSA Properties. In the early 1990s, he bought it from billionaire Leslie Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein's longtime financial client and mentor, founder of Victoria's Secret L Brands, after Jeffrey tipped him off about the opportunity. So that's the other thing is Wexner also sold Jeffrey his notorious, really expensive apartment in Manhattan, and he sold it to him for a really cheap. Like I feel like it was even a gift. Like he gifted it to him, which was another one of the very suspicious things about their relationship. So according to this researcher, the building allegedly housed young models, employees, girlfriends, and key associates in Jeffrey's network, including Nadia Marcinkova, Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, and the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Separate from Jeffrey's main townhouse, the building allegedly provided stability, proximity, and cover for operations. Survivors described it as a place where young women and models were housed or recruited. Epstein's personal address book listed multiple units there as apartment for models. So, okay, it does seem like there's some witness testimony and that there's some like paper evidence for this as well. Several alleged co-conspirators named in Jeffrey's 2008 immunity deal had long-term ties to this address. Interesting. Nadia Marcinkova, formerly Marcinkova, allegedly to have participated in the abuse. So yeah, she was another one of the recruiters who seemed to be taking over for Glenn, not taking over, but following in her footsteps, so to speak. Her firm, Avaloop LLC, was registered at the 301 East 66th Street per 2019 Wired. The recent Epstein files show a hoodie labeled JEE Nadia's property, suggesting a deep tie to Epstein. She's not been seen publicly since early 2024. So now she's going into another one. So these people all have had immunity as a part of the deal. One of the former residents say she saw Ehud Barak a lot. Mark Epstein described the tenants as ordinary rentals and denied knowledge of specific companies or activities tied to Epstein. No public evidence or charges against him. Yeah, it just seems kind of weird that he's like, I had no clue what my brother was doing. I mean, he's still correct about his brother being killed, but at the same time, I maybe he should be investigated too. But that reminds me of who really, really needs to be investigated. Where's this guy at? I think I got him all the way at the top. No. Where is he? I'll look him up. What's his name? What's the Kevin O'Leary? That's the guy's name. The Shark Tank guy. Let's see. I'm trying to find a better clip of it. There was one at the top, but it was like one of those TikTok clips with the guy's face in the side of it. Here's the better one. Yeah. So he kept on saying on this, one of those panel talks that they have on CNN, he kept on saying, like, oh, people aren't interested in this. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And it just seems like this guy also, remember that he was like going to bat for Sam Bankman-Fried during the whole FTX thing when he ripped everybody off. He was out there on all the news channels talking about how much he trusted Sam and how brilliant Sam was and how there's nothing to worry about. And then, like, billions were lost. But yeah, let's check out this little 1-minute clip here and see how he looks.
I would love for them to release the files. I am not at all in Trump's base. However, I care deeply about it because I'm not going to buy this argument that like these young girls were raped by what? That did they rape themselves? No, they got raped by people who are in powerful positions. And I want to know how many of those individuals are currently serving in our government in some role or the other.
American awake for 18 hours a day. How many minutes do you think they spend worrying about this stuff? Maybe they were raped, maybe they weren't. This is not what American families give a damn about.
Just to be clear,
they just don't.
We do know that there were victims, so that's not speculative.
We do know that there were victims. And the thing is, people can compartmentalize, right? And the reason why people care about this a lot, not just because of the very real Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking and the crimes that were committed, it is the fact that Donald Trump himself spent years, him and his allies, promised their base, we are going to deliver the Epstein client list that's going to take down all of your Democratic enemies.
Bring it.
Yeah, well, yes, bring it. Donald,
poop.
please. Donald,
nobody gives a poop.
You don't give a poop, okay?
But
other people do, including people like me who want justice. And I want to know how many of those people are in our government.
I
don't know about
poop about this.
To show something.
Yeah, the polls.
A lot of Republicans do.
Dude seemed very, very insistent. Yeah, I agree with Michael Wolff about that point about Michael Wolff too. Yeah, like because he even admitted that he was basically, kind of rehabilitating it. Like he was giving Epstein a lot of advice on how to rehabilitate himself, and his excuse for that is that he was trying to, like playing undercover cop kind of deal. That was his excuse. And I do still think that there is good information that comes from him. But at the same time, I have issues trusting him for sure. I still watch a lot of those Daily Beast interviews that they have just out of curiosity. But I'm more interested in the tapes that he recorded with Epstein himself. And I wish that, he would just release them instead of saying that he needs to wait for a buyer.
We're raped by
O'Leary,
what?
He not only the FTX thing, but there was another situation where like he like took a couple people's lives on a boat accident and he got away with it. or they were like, him and his wife were like drunk and driving a boat or something, and they ended up, yeah, let's see. Linda O'Leary found not guilty in fatal boat crash. Somebody said earlier too, I got to do something about these ads. It's probably correct. I got to get an ad blocker or something. O'Leary at the helm when boat collided with another vessel on August 24th, 2019. So prosecutors failed to prove Linda O'Leary was operating her boat without proper care or consideration for others when it crashed into a vessel in central Ontario 2 years ago, a judge ruled as he cleared her in the fatal collision. She was charged with careless operation of a vessel. Linda O'Leary was driving, and her husband and a friend on the boat. The group was returning from a dinner party at another college, and the court had heard that Linda O'Leary was the designated driver. Yeah, that's the story I heard. So people were saying that he was actually driving it, and that she just kind of took credit or something like that because she wasn't drinking, and then said that she was the designated driver. I'm not sure if that is the case, but it is just a wild thing to be involved in. In addition to, like, sure, accidents happen, you know what I mean? But and get away. Look, alcohol played no part based on evidence. There was also insufficient evidence to determine at the speed at which O'Leary boat was traveling or which speed was approximate circumstances. So yeah, maybe that was a little bit of a dead end, but still, like, yeah, exactly. But the it's just sketch how he's like, nobody cares. Like, it seems like he's protesting a little bit too much there. Let's see, share back to here. There was a couple of, what's this? Oh yeah, search in O'Leary. Let me go back to there were a couple of other yeah, this was another one about the boats. We talked a little bit about this, but the yacht that Adnan Khashoggi, the uncle of Jamal Khashoggi, who was assassinated by agents of the Crown Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Trump named this yacht the Trump Princess, which he purchased in 1988 for $29 million. This is the same yacht that Ghislaine Maxwell's father died on. So that's a weird one. I'm curious what these people have to say on
the
this.
Trump Princess, the boat we're all talking about.
Legit periodical. The name of the boat originally was the Trump Princess.
What?
Epstein, Sirlead, Adnan Khashoggi had that boat commissioned as a floating harem. Adnan Khashoggi spending over $100,000 at times on
It's very
girls
quiet.
younger than 16.
Oh, so this is suggesting that Adnan Khashoggi was also a trafficker, as was Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, and that is why the yacht has stayed in these hands.
These people are all in one big circle. I don't want to be the jerk that's pointing it all out, but can you see?
This one is a bit quiet, terrible audio, so I can't really get that much of it. But I did not know that angle, and that is pretty crazy. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, there was the issue with JP Morgan, but I didn't look that into it. I knew that there was basically more evidence that they knew what was going on with him and didn't actually do anything. Let's see what we got here. The document contains an email chain from 2021 discussing Taryn Pizer and Michael Wachs on their alleged involvement in financial improprietors, including, why is this 2021? This is like after the fact. I gotta follow this page, Epstein Secrets. This says the people who made the the web, I think. Yeah. Is this new? Let's see if there's anything interesting in here. The document reveals Jeffrey Epstein's attempts to position himself as a political power broker, discussing his connections to world leaders and influential figures, including Sebastian Kurz, Jared Kushner, and Donald Trump. Epstein's conversations also touch on his efforts to provide a security blanket for someone referred to as Miro, and his opinions on various political figures. The document shows Epstein's alleged influence and access to high-profile individuals. The document House Oversight is a collection of the iMessage conversation logs from Jeffrey Epstein's phone, spanning July 1st to 10th, 2018. Conversations are between Epstein and an individual identified as PO or PF and cover various topics, including politics, international relations, and personal connections. The document provides insight into Epstein's social circle as he attempts to navigate and influence political relationships. Let's see. Epstein describes Miro as someone who could take the movement to the next level and mentions working on a security blanket for him and his family. I wonder, we should try to find out who Miro is. I'm going to put that on my list. I'm going to write that down real quick. Who is Miro? We'll try to figure that out on stream one time, maybe. Sometime, maybe this weekend. Epstein refers to Jared Kushner as the idiot son-in-law, suggesting a negative opinion of Kushner's abilities or actions. Sounds like AI wrote this. I bet it did. Well, actually, yeah, it is AI. The whole thing is. Epstein discusses his perceived influence over Donald Trump, stating that he could have been the Trump whisperer years ago, implying a close relationship or potential for significant influence. That's not too juicy, except for the because it says some juicy details on this post, but let's look at the other one. Regardless, that Miro thing is a good angle to search down who that's a code name for. Sebastian Kurz, the Chancellor of Austria, appears in the Epstein investigation files through iMessage conversations from Epstein's phone, indicating a potential meeting request. The documents reveal a brief discussion about scheduling a meeting between Kurz and Epstein in July 2018. Sebastian Kurz appears in the documents as a result of an iMessage conversation, and an unknown sender, PF, who informs Epstein that Kurz wants to meet you. Epstein responds by mentioning Kurz is the same contact. In the same context as other notable figures, suggesting a potential connection or meeting. The conversation also touches on scheduling prospective dates for a meeting with Kurz. No. So they're just talking about a potential meeting with the Chancellor of Austria. So it does give a little bit more insight into the kind of high level people that he was talking to. Although somebody did bring up a good point in the comments about the president of Poland and the things we saw in the message before, and why was he riding a train, especially like an Amtrak, which is what it would have been. That definitely seems unusual for a president. And I know it's some of those messages they were based on inferences, like for not like some of the messages were redacted and they tried to figure out through context clues who they were. And the guy said in that message from the Polish president, like, I just got done meeting with Donald Trump, and on that day the Polish president did meet with Donald Trump. And I think that there were some other context clues that lined it up, but that one, that small detail definitely seems iffy to me now that somebody pointed it out. But yeah, who knows what PF is short for. I am definitely curious about the Miro, the codename Miro person. Wait. It looks like there's another one that might be interesting. It looks like this got unredacted somehow. document is a 122-page file of unknown type or source that mentions several high-profile individuals and organizations. The document contains an email chain from 2021 discussing Taryn Pizer and Michael Wachs. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name, and their alleged involvement in financial improprieties, including obstruction of justice and money laundering. It also references SEC filings, stock purchase agreements, and other financial instruments. The document's significance lies in its potential connection to ongoing investigations into financial crimes and its mention of individuals with ties to Epstein. So that is kind of another one of these things is the financial crimes is I think that there are many reasons why so many factors in our society like want to keep this thing hidden, and it is because of the fact that you know they they are personally embarrassed by it, but also because the people who aren't even associated with it, who are in power, don't want the world to realize how actually above the law they are, and how the justice system is really just um, um, it's a system to maintain hierarchies essentially, and you know by accident sometimes it solves problems for people, and sometimes people get justice by accident through it, but the main purpose is to maintain those hierarchies, which these people exploit, and they exploit, very, very happily. Um, so, but yeah, there are so many other elements to it, like the financial aspect. Like so many parts of our economy is just total scam, and I think that this is going to expose a lot of that as well. And also how intertwined a lot of these people are. Even if you think about something as simple as Noam Chomsky hanging out with Steve Bannon and then going and giving a lecture weeks later talking about how, you know, Steve Bannon is ushering in a new wave of fascism and stuff like that, which is literally what happened. And now we see pictures of them like with the biggest smile that you've ever seen on Chomsky's face before with Steve Bannon in Epstein's house. And um that is reality shattering in some ways. So there is a lot about this that is really, really reality shattering um, across the board, and there are probably things that I can't even conceive of yet that are gonna be thrown out in here. Um, like we don't know the extent of the blackmail, how many generations of politicians have been blackmailed, how many major uh so like Google, for example. How do I was thinking about this earlier. We know that Google or Sergey Brin is involved with Epstein, and I think Larry Page as well. I'm not 100% sure on Larry Page. Maybe we could give a search here. Hold on, let's see. Let's see if we can and remember, just because they don't have files yet doesn't mean that they it doesn't mean that they aren't affiliated with him. 2000 Monterey airplane visit described at least 13 identical copies, suggesting this antidote was being Page appears on exclusive guest list. So yeah, documents appear to be. One document suggests questions were being prepared about the TED conference. So yeah, regardless, Sergey Brin for sure. So remember early on in the whole and there are a couple possibilities, but in the early tech era when social media was just getting started out and stuff, Google's um their tagline was like don't be evil and stuff. And yet like maybe that always was a lie because they had a lot of State Department funding early on. I don't know if it was specifically the State Department, but I know it was like some branch of the government that isn't great. And but regardless, there was this kind of ethos in the tech world that like, you don't do military contracts, and you don't spy on your users. Google was the one to change that norm. There is I can't remember which book it is, but there is a book about how they really did change that norm. I read a couple books on Google or listened to a couple books on Google. I can't remember which one it was. Um, but they really said, like, so for example, when they launched Gmail and they had the first like ads that appeared in your Gmail that were based on the things that you talked about in your email or something like that, it was this massive controversy, but they doubled down on it. They kept on doing it and it became their business model. Um my thinking is, I wonder how many of these companies um were pressured into cooperating with the NSA in the way that they did with what we found out with Snowden. Like, I I would be willing to bet that the number is greater than 0 for number of tech companies that wanted to resist this and got the call like, "Hey, we got this blackmail material on you." It might be a wild theory, but I don't think it's that far out of the realm of possibility because, um, eh, they did kind of sell out along the way. And now it could have always been a scam. They could have always been anticipating setting up a panopticon, you know what I mean? But I think that some of those tech companies were more idealistic for sure. Not all of them, I don't think, set out like Peter Thiel to like take over the world or something like that. I think a lot of them had very uh, you know, kind of optimistic, utopian even kind of perspective on what the internet could do and what the internet could create. I remember having a very utopian vision of the internet back in those early days, especially like when alternative media started and I started seeing different perspectives and things before it really the brain rot started. It was very easy to be utopian. Um, but regardless, we talk a lot about the politicians that are kept in line through blackmail, and I think that these tech companies really are important for the powers that shouldn't be to control as well, you know? Um, but but yeah, I am not I'm not sure, but I think it's a very real possibility. Let me see if I had anything else to get to. I know that I don't have time to go through all of that eugenics based stuff, but I'll save that for tomorrow because I think that that could be like its own live stream because it's very deep and there's a lot of history there. Um let's see, there are a couple. I'm going to go through a couple more of these. Um a lot this Grizzy person, so much awesome finds. So this isn't super relevant, but it was just like people were wondering the location for this, and it is quite an interesting location. So this is the Empire Suite at the Empire Hotel in Brunei. The suite is privately controlled, ultra secure space used for heads of state and elite guests, featuring an indoor pool, theater room, and restricted access floors. So that place does look baller for sure. But apparently it's on this like exclusive island. Let's see. Brunei is not a tourist hub. It's a strategic, low visibility state on the island of Borneo, surrounded by Malaysia, facing the South China Sea. This reminds me of that thing like for New Year's that everybody was sharing where all the billionaires were, wow, ridiculous. Um, all the billionaires were at that same place in New Year's Eve, like I guess it was a couple islands over from Epstein's. Was it Billionaire New Year's? I forget what the yeah, that island, whatever it's called. Can't, yeah. But it's something like tons of yachts were descending upon this thing. Yeah, St. Barth's, which really sounds weird. And like, I don't know, like, even if I was a billionaire that had a yacht, I probably that just I don't know. I wouldn't want to go to the place with all the yachts. It just seems I don't know. But maybe that's why I'm not a billionaire. There's probably a lot of a lot of networking and crime both going on. But yeah, that reminded me of that a little bit. Let's see if there's this other like web of influence around Trump, but that's another deep rabbit hole to get into. Looked through this, but yeah, definitely give that account a follow. I got to give them some credit for sure. That's one. That looks like another deep rabbit hole. I'll save that though. Yeah, I'll save them for tomorrow. Well, thanks for joining me, everybody. Definitely check out the video I have on the page about Epstein's company with Ehud Barak called Carbine. I went through an interview with the CEO and their commercial that they have. And they basically brag about how they're setting up their infrastructure with 911 centers all around the world. And they are collecting more information about people so they can respond to emergencies better, which, yeah, it does sound great, but they can actually also access your phone, your camera on your phone at any time and turn it on to see what's happening. And, um, Epstein is investing in this or was investing in this along with Ehud Barak. So it seems kind of strange, and also kind of scary that one of the world's infamous blackmailers wants to have access to your phone camera. So yeah, definitely check that one out. That was from my stream that I ended up taking down because it was just a little bit messy, but I appreciate those of you who were with me and who stuck around for it. But yeah, the highlight is definitely that Carbine video because that was a good find. And yeah, thanks again, everybody. And I will be seeing you tomorrow. We'll dig into some of that other stuff and whatever kind of stuff pops up tomorrow as well. All right, peace.